This is me before starting A Little Life. This is me finishing A Little Life. That's right, I, Sunny Kim, the biggest crybaby known to man, decided to read the saddest book of all time. This binge right here, A Little Life. Oh, and I accidentally read this 720-page book in 24 hours. Why? I honestly feel like I haven't seen a book with like this level of like discourse around it. So in the words of Dr. Doja Cat PhD, I needed to know. So if you don't know what this book is about, because I didn't, you follow the lives, and I mean entire life, of 4 boys who are friends in college. Jude, Willem, Malcolm, and JB. And in real time, you're unraveling the childhood trauma that happened to Jude because it's all a big mystery. Let me try to piece this all together. And I really tried to crack that like a mystery. 1,000,000% has something to do with. And while I won't be discussing any of the triggering and graphic content in this video, reader discretion is heavily advised, so there will be minor spoilers in this video, like character details or certain events that don't mean anything unless you've read the book and know its context. This book's been heavily critiqued for being senselessly and gratuitously traumatic, but I needed to see for myself, and by the end, I do have my own opinion about it. I'm just gonna say right now, this is probably one of the books I've ever read in my entire life. And you will too. Not putting makeup on was a strategic choice. I actually saw a Pinterest quote absolutely changed the trajectory of my life, and turns out it was from this book, and the writing in it was... Let's begin. Willem and JB are looking at an apartment and they say our friend has trouble climbing stairs and needs an elevator. Is that Jude? I'm scared because I'm like, is this attached to his childhood trauma that it says on the back? Because I saw a TikTok of like a play adaptation, zero context for what was happening, but it was like devastating. It made me like sick to my stomach. I'm just so scared. Literally only been 1 chapter. We've like already learned so much. Pretty much everyone's backstory. I think that so far the relationship I care about the most is between Jude and William, which are the 2 boys who are trying to room together. I just love how protective Willem is towards Jude. Like, what happened to this boy? Because why is he in severe chronic leg pain all the time? He like never complains about it, never asks for help. I think every single time it's like a Willem and Jude little snippet. They're always my favorite. His feelings for Jude were complicated. He loved him. That part was simple. But he sometimes saw things in Jude that disturbed him. They all loved Jude and admired him, but he often felt that Jude had let him see a little more of him than he had shown the others, and was unsure what he was supposed to do with that knowledge. I'm sorry, this is kind of a scary angle. I'm on page 63. I'm having my first almost cry. Only this far into the book. We're just learning more about Willem and his family. It's basically talking about how unhappy he was with his parents until they both died. In their deaths, Willem was able to remember that he had loved them after all. He would wish he were back in Wyoming, where the only path he had to navigate was the one back to his parents' house, where the porch light washed the night with honey. Oh, I'm about to cry. Oh, first tear fell. Okay, I just finished part 1. Part 1 was called Lespinard Street, the street that Willem and Jude live on. So next is the postman. Just in the friend group, like no one asks about his past. Everyone's too scared of what the answer is gonna be because they know that it's something bad. He's a law student, or he graduated law school. He has an unknown ethnicity. Grew up in extreme poverty. What happened to you, Jude? Throughout this entire thing, like I kept just like writing like I'm so scared. Like I'm scared. I would say that Malcolm's main story is that he's like half black and half white, but he's also really rich. Because his family's so wealthy, he has been insulated from like all the bigotry. He participates in like the oppression Olympics, that he feels guilty and like he should be victimized, and so he's always looking for a way to be victimized. And then JB, in my opinion, he has a bit of like a god complex, a bit brash sometimes, definitely the most like energetic. Anyway, part 1 ends with like the accident. Willem is the one that's there for it. Who is this man? This man that looks like Jim Carrey. Oh my gosh, wait. Part 2 is literally starting with Jude's POV. I'm so scared. I'm like being overwhelmed by like the Jude lore that we're getting after we got nothing girl in part 1. He's about to turn 30. Clearly remembered being a very young boy. This is when he lived in the monastery. He lived in a monastery? Wait, guys, we're learning so much Jude lore. A serious question. Was he like in a cult or something? He never had pizza or popsicles or macaroni and cheese. He had never owned a computer or a phone. He had rarely been allowed to go online. He had never owned anything. Or was he just, maybe I'm being mean, maybe not a cult, maybe he was just like that poor, like that impoverished. But what is his origin story? I mean, he's like super smart. The classroom was the safest place and the only place he felt fully confident. He found himself keeping mental lists of new things he had heard and encountered, but he could never ask anyone for answers. To do so would be an admission of extreme otherness, which would invite further questions and which would inevitably lead to conversations he definitely was not prepared to have. I'm worried, darling. Oh, this chapter is called The Postman because the postman is a nickname for Jude that JP gave him, like in reference to like postmodernism, post-racial, post-identity. So they call Jude the postman because they don't know anything about him and he never says anything about himself. His silence was both a necessity and a protection. We're getting what I've been waiting for, which is Jude talking about Willem from his POV. He would catch Willem watching him with an indecipherable expression on his face and would wonder how much Willem might have guessed about him. Sometimes he had to stop himself from saying something. Although if he were to tell anyone, he knew it would be Willem. Admired all three of his roommates, but Willem was the one he trusted. We finally found out what happened with Jude's legs. Jude says, and I quote, "It was a car injury. I was 15. It was the year before I came here." Car injury, not a car accident. You could never call it an accident because it wasn't. What? What is that supposed to mean? What do you mean it was not an accident? We're getting the story like post car injury where Jude woke up in the hospital and he's talking to his social worker named Anna. She says enough to convince me that there's a hell and those men need to be in it. Who are these men? What happened? And we know that Jude was in the foster care system. It was Anna, the social worker, who finally got him to write down what had happened with Dr. Trailer and kept him from having to testify in court. He said that he could do it, but she had told him he wasn't ready yet and that they had plenty of evidence to put Dr. Trailer away for years. Who the hell is Dr. Trailer? When I see him, who's Dr. Trailer and then who are all the other men? Anna read through what he said once. She's like sobbing, ugly, crying, weeping. What happened? And this literally happened right before he went to college and then met the other three boys. That's insane. This is the face of someone who just came out of war. But the war is just 2 pages out of Jude's chapter. I think I have enough to put together a semi-timeline of what we know about Jude's life. Let me try to piece this all together. When he was younger, all we know is that he grew up in a monastery. We don't know when, just sometime in his childhood, someone did say that like, Jude, you know more than you think you do. You have brother Luke to thank for that. Some type of education in the monastery because he also knows how to play the piano. At 15 was the car injury. Sometime in these years was something that happened with this Dr. Trailer. After the car injury, which 1,000,000% has something to do with whatever this was, because of that, it lands him in the hospital. After the hospital, he goes to the Douglas family for foster care until he goes to college. But they said that this was his last family. Also, somewhere within this mix, there's more foster homes. This is the part that's all muddled. I'm gonna censor Dr. Trailer too. There we go. So everything before 15, no idea what happened. Dr. Trailer, when I see you, I feel like I'm just becoming super overprotective of Jude because every time a new adult comes into his life, I've got my eye on. It seems like Harold, which is his law professor who he like clerks for, interns for. He seems really nice actually. Professor Harold is the only one that I trust. And if you've been wondering the same thing that I've been wondering, which is why is Jude in law school? And he's also doing his master's in pure math at MIT at the same time, which means that I'm never gonna complain about school ever again. The real answer is that he wanted to have the means to protect himself, that he wanted to make sure no one could ever reach him again. It's happening again. I feel like I'm crying in sections that like is not the part that most people are crying at. I feel like I'm more of like a happy crier than anything else, do you know what I mean? I really bawl like a baby when I'm like really moved or like touched by something. Seeing Jude's entire friendship with his professor Harold. I need to get the whiteboard. Before New York, there had been law school. Before that, college. Before that, Philadelphia. Before that, Montana, the boys' home. And before Montana, the Southwest and the motel room. Before that was South Dakota and the monastery. And before that, a father and mother, presumably. It was brother Peter who told him he'd been found in a garbage can. So, parents, garbage can, monastery, motel rooms, boys' home. Pressure is spiking. I'm like getting heart palpitations. So I just finished part 2. The quote that I saw on Pinterest that made me want to read this book is at the end of this chapter, Jude talking about his friendships. And then I went to college and I met people who for whatever reason decided to be my friends and they taught me everything really. They made me and make me into someone better than I really am. The only trick of friendship, I think, is to find people who are better than you are, not smarter, not cooler, but kinder and more generous and more forgiving. And then to appreciate them for what they can teach you and to try to listen to them when they tell you something about yourself, no matter how bad or good it might be, and to trust them, which is the hardest thing of all, but the best as well. Now on to chapter 3 called Vanities. Speaking of Jude, can't think of a better sponsor for this video than BetterHelp. One of the main challenges that Jude faces in this book is opening up. Actually, something that Anna, the social worker, says in this book that I think is so true is the longer it takes for you to start talking about it, the harder it's going to be. And something that my therapist said to me that I think about all the time and I say to everyone because it's so true. Shame breeds in secrecy. Obviously, I say that though, having once been in a position where it was so hard to ask for help and open up. Honestly, who knows how things might have ended up if Jude had this proper help and proper support that he needed. BetterHelp connects you to a licensed therapist who's trained to listen and give you helpful, unbiased advice. It's super easy. You just go to their site, which is betterhelp.com/sunnykim. You answer a few questions, do a quick little survey just to like assess your needs and then match you with the proper therapist. You can put in all your information for like scheduling. And then the best part is that you can get all the support that you need, all from the comfort of your own home. Whether that's through phone calls, video calls, messaging, whatever is most convenient. And usually you can be matched within 48 hours, which is amazing. So if you want BetterHelp to connect you to a therapist, be sure to visit betterhelp.com/sunnykim. I'll have everything linked in my description too. Or you can also choose Sunny Kim when you sign up, and then you'll have a special discount on your first month. So thank you so much to BetterHelp for sponsoring. And back to the video. Just finished part 3, and I feel like this chapter was like JB's chapter. I don't know, I feel like JB is like the character that I'm attached to the least. I think it's like harder for me to have sympathy for him because I feel like he's probably the least liked. Like out of the 4 of them. Willem and Jude. Is it friendship, romantic, codependence? Who's to say? Part 4. Axiom? Equality. Oh my gosh, they're all like 40 years old now. Again, I feel like I'm crying in a section that people are probably not crying about at all. On page 331, you're basically watching and experiencing a friendship breakup. I'll always want wonderful things for you, he said. Oh, it's like the thing that's like, I hope you get everything you've ever wanted and I hope that I see none of it. Sometimes you just need to accept that, you know, someone who used to be one of the most important people in your life, they are just really good memories to you now. That's what this part is giving. You'll always think of them as the 4 of them, the 4 of us. What the hell? I'm on page 366. We have a new name to add. Blacklist. That woke me right the hell up. Just finished part 4. It genuinely felt like it was lasting forever. I feel like the parts that I get the most emotional about and that are making me cry and throw up are actually like always the perspective of like the father parental figure towards Jude, like every time he has a POV. Chapter 5 is called The Happy Years, and that makes me very nervous. Very nervous. This far into the book, Jude is finally telling Willem what happened to him little by little, like one story at a time. Of course, it's like so horrific, but if Jude was beginning with the easier stories, he now knew enough to know that those stories, if he ever heard them, would be horrific. He almost didn't want to know. Sometimes he wondered if he could ever love anyone as much as he loved Jude. His friendship with Jude made him feel that there was something real and immutable about who he was. Something that Jude saw even when he could not, as if Jude's very witness of him made him real. Okay, you guys know that I truly just a pathological matchmaker, and so I just yap and blabber just for my own entertainment. But I truly never expect any of my predictions to like actually be true. Lately, however, he had been feeling differently about Jude and he wasn't sure what to do about it. Let's go! This is like what I was manifesting. Based on everything that I heard about this book, I thought that there was no way that the one light at the end of the tunnel would actually happen, but it actually did. Okay, on page 581, Happy Days. I should have known it wouldn't last. But I'm just here to say that Andy and Harold are the absolute goats in this book. This far into the book, page 624. Last piece of the puzzle. Chapter trailer. Also, it's midnight and I'm delirious. I have to finish. Oh, I look like a ghost. 634. Car injury. That's what he said. Car injury. Oh my god, I'm gonna be sick. Oh my god. Now we know all the pieces about what happened. Every year, his own good fortunes multiplied and intensified. He was astonished again and again by the things and generosities that were bequeathed to him by the people who entered his life. He would remember then Harold's claim that life compensated for its losses, and he would realize the truth of that, although sometimes it would seem like life had not just compensated for itself, but had done so extravagantly, as if his very life was begging him to forgive it, as if it were piling riches upon him, smothering him in all things beautiful and wonderful and hoped for, so he wouldn't resent it, so he would allow it to keep moving him forward.
He ignored what the past had taught him, and more often than he should have been, he was rewarded for it. He regretted none of it. Like I told you, it's like the happy stuff, like after everything he's been through, how he still has hope and the strength to keep going. Oh my god.
Oh my god. Of course we couldn't have just one good thing, because the next chapter, chapter 3, page 637, Willem's point of view. What the hell, William? I had so much faith in you. Okay, I just finished part 5. I'm so delirious, but genuinely I was like, did that just happen? The next part's called Dear Comrade.
Wait a second.
It is true. All the mean things that I was saying about JB. Love you. Okay, wait. Low-key, I take that back. I cannot figure this man out.
Wait. I feel like this is the scene of like that play that I mentioned earlier that I saw on page 792. I said it before, I think that what gets me most in this book is the father-son relationship. Cries for everything he has been, for everything he might have been, for every old hurt, for every old happiness. Cries for the shame and joy of finally getting to be a child with all of a child's whims and wants. For the privilege of behaving badly and being forgiven. Of believing that to someone he is special despite all his mistakes and hatefulness. I just finished that part. This is the final part of the book. It's called Lespinard Street. I was really hoping that this was gonna have like a hopeful ending. It'll be a happy cry. I don't know. Jury's still out. Just turn the page. It says acknowledgements, which means that this is the last page. I feel like this is the famous quote that I see. So I try to be kind to everything I see, and in everything I see him. That's it. I finished that book. Might be one of the best books I've ever read in my entire life. I don't think that there's gonna be a day that goes by that I do not think about the characters in this book. Yep. I'm just gonna say right now, this is probably one of the best books I've ever read in my entire life. I was profoundly moved by it. So let's get into the controversy. If it's like trauma porn, like everything that happens to this character, like is it excessive to the point where it doesn't serve a purpose and so it's just gratuitous? I can completely see why people have that opinion. In my personal opinion, I feel like people need to understand the concept of like vulnerability. I feel like that perspective is coming from like the viewpoint of what are the chances, all of that falling onto one person, as if each terrible thing that happens is like a flip of the coin, when that's like so not the case. I feel like everyone needs to search up social determinants of health, then you will then understand that genuinely nothing in the world ever exists in a vacuum like that, where it's just like a flip of the coin of whether or not it's gonna happen and how did he get tails every single time. That's just not how it happens at all. There are social determinants that determine whether or not you're more vulnerable, and there's a reason why certain traumatic events or certain things have overlaps, and like certain populations are more likely that if you've experienced this, then you're more likely to also experience this and this and this. And that just applies to life also outside of this book too. Okay, I'm also gonna quote like a news article. I just saw it and I was like, I agree with this opinion. It never feels excessive or sensationalist. It's not included for shock value. Jude's suffering is so extensively documented because it is the foundation of his character. And I have two reasons why I back this opinion up. The first is that in my opinion, Jude is not the character in this book that you are supposed to be relating to. Like Jude is not supposed to be the representative like self-insert character in this book. All the characters around Jude are the people who you are supposed to kind of see yourself reflected in. Like this is John Kanyonya's
what would you do? And then second, all of the most emotionally detached kind of writing in Jude's POV wasn't there like showing or explaining what happened to Jude, but the most emotionally connected, as in we feel what Jude is feeling, parts where we are in some way supposed to be able to relate to Jude are never the graphic traumatic parts. It's always the common humanity parts, like his friendship, his hope. I will share now my reflections on what this book means to me. First is endurance. It really reminds me of one of my favorite book quotes, which is you endure what is unbearable and you bear it. And then friendship, love, and companionship also reminded me of one of my favorite book quotes ever, which is no one can live with nothing.